In the last couple of videos, I've been talking about the wealth state of consciousness. And a few of you have left comments saying, okay, I hear you. I get that wealth is a state of consciousness, but how do I actually embody it? So that's what this video is all about. Today, we're going to talk about 5 specific shifts that you can make to embody and actually live the wealth state of consciousness right now. Most people try to manifest wealth by doing more techniques, but here's what actually works. You don't manifest wealth, you embody wealth. The moment you shift your financial identity is the moment that everything will change for you. Not tomorrow, not after you see proof, but right now, immediately in consciousness. And I'm about to show you exactly how to make that shift in 5 practical steps that you can start doing today. These are not techniques that you perform once and then forget about. These are identity level changes that rewire how you relate to money permanently. So if you're ready to stop performing abundance and start actually being abundance, keep watching. The first step to embodying wealth is to catch yourself operating from your current bank account. And this is where most people lose the game before they even really start to play. Because every single day, multiple times a day, you're making decisions based on what you currently have. You check your bank balance before deciding whether or not you can buy something. You calculate if you can afford an opportunity before considering, do I actually even want it? You let your financial situation dictate your choices, your mood, and your sense of possibility. And every time you do that, you are telling your subconscious that you are defined by what you see on the outside. Circumstances define how wealthy I am. And that keeps you locked in the same financial reality because you're creating from limitation. But wealthy people, people with true wealth consciousness, they don't make decisions based on their current bank balance. They make decisions from their desired end. Now, I'm not saying to go into debt trying to fake this. I'm saying you need to notice every time you check your bank account before making a choice or a decision. Notice when you're about to say, oh, I can't afford that, and catch yourself. Because that phrase, I can't afford that, is not just a statement about your current finances. It's an affirmation of a state of consciousness, a poverty state of consciousness. And it's you identifying as someone who lacks. And the shift here is simple but profound. Because instead of asking, can I afford this? You need to start by asking, do I want this? Make the decision first from desire, from your wealthy identity, and then handle the logistics from that state. So if you want something, if you truly want something and you are truly wealthy in consciousness, you will either find a way to get it or you will realize you don't actually want it that badly. But either way, at least you are not making the decision from lack. I started doing this with small things first. Someone would invite me somewhere, and instead of immediately calculating if I could afford it, I would ask myself, do I want to go? And if the answer was yes, then I would say yes, and then I would figure out how to make it work. And what I noticed was that opportunities, ideas, and money would show up to cover it, not because of magic, but because I was operating from the state of someone who has options. And that state creates different circumstances than the state of someone who is controlled by their bank account. So, true story about this. Many years ago, I was invited to attend a yoga teacher training for 6 weeks in Costa Rica. And at the time, the cost was more than I had in my bank account. And so I had to make the decision, am I going to choose about this opportunity based on what's in my bank account, or am I going to choose based on whether or not I want to go? And so thinking about yoga teacher training in Costa Rica, I decided, yeah, I want to do this. And so I started sleeping in Costa Rica in my imagination. So I would go to bed at night, and as I was falling asleep, I was imagining that I was in the jungle, hearing the jungle sounds, that it was already done, I was already there. True story. Couple of days later, I am going through an old box of stuff in my closet, and I happened to find a gift card that I had never used. It was a cash Visa card I'd never used for exactly the amount of money that was required to pay for the yoga teacher training. So the money was there. I did have it. I didn't know that I had it, but I found it once I shifted into the state of living from the end. So, step 1 is becoming aware of every moment you are letting your current finances make decisions for you. And once you catch yourself doing it, that's when you can make a different choice. You can decide from your wealthy identity first and then act from that state. And that one shift alone will start to change your financial reality because you're no longer creating from limitation, you're creating from the assumption of wealth. But catching yourself is really just the beginning because awareness without replacement keeps you stuck in the middle, which brings me to step number 2. You have to deliberately script your inner conversations about money. And most people have no idea how much poverty consciousness is running in the background of their minds all day long. You'll be going about your day and your mind is constantly narrating lack. This thing is expensive. I wish I could afford that. I need to be careful with money. I can't spend too much this month. I really hope this payment comes through. And every single one of those thoughts, if you really look at it beneath the surface, it's an assumption of poverty. And of course, we're talking about the law of assumption. So if you're assuming poverty, then what are you creating? You're creating poverty. Every single one of these thoughts is you identifying as someone who does not have enough, who has to be careful, who is worried about money. And Neville was very clear. Assumptions create reality. So if your habitual inner dialogue is saturated with lack, that's exactly what you're going to continue experiencing. But here's what most people don't realize. You can change your inner dialogue consciously. You can rewrite the script that runs in your mind. So step 2 is to become hyper aware of your thoughts about money and to deliberately replace poverty thoughts with wealth thoughts. And I don't mean toxic positivity where you force yourself to feel grateful for bills. I mean you catch yourself when that thought plays thinking, I can't afford that. You catch that thought and you replace it on purpose with the thought, I always have more than enough. And when you have that thought, money is tight this month, you instantly replace it with money flows to me constantly. Now, the first 100 times you do this, it's probably going to feel fake. Your brain is going to reject it, and you might even think, this is stupid. I'm just lying to myself. But my bank account says something other than what I'm telling my mind. But here's the key. You have to persist anyway. Because what you're doing is you're training your subconscious to occupy a new state when it comes to money. You're not trying to convince your conscious mind, you're impressing your subconscious mind with a new assumption. And the way you know this is working is when those wealth thoughts start to become automatic. When your first response to looking at a price tag is not, this is expensive, I can't afford it, but rather, do I want this? When your automatic thought about money shifts from scarcity to abundance without you having to force it, that's when you know your identity is shifting. I used to have to consciously catch poverty consciousness thoughts every single day. But after a few weeks of doing it religiously, I made it a focus thing. I was like, I'm going to catch these thoughts and I'm going to replace them. After a few weeks of doing that, I noticed that my default thoughts around money changed. I would see an opportunity and my automatic thought was, of course I can afford this, but do I want it? And that little shift in automatic thinking is the shift in identity. And that is exactly what creates your financial reality. But here's where most people stall out. They do step 1 and step 2 for a while. They start feeling different internally, and then they don't actually take step 3. And step 3 is where the identity actually solidifies. So step 3 is to make one financial decision per week from your wealthy identity, not your current circumstances. And this is what separates people who shift their identity from people who just think about shifting their identity. Because you can catch your thoughts and you can change your inner dialogue. But if your actions still reflect poverty consciousness, then you have not actually shifted. Your identity is proven by your behavior. So you have to start acting from your wealthy identity, even in small ways, to convince your subconscious that this is real. Now, this does not mean be reckless. It doesn't mean to go into debt buying things that you don't need. What I'm saying is make one choice per week that the wealthy version of you would make. Maybe it's investing in a course that you've been putting off. Maybe it's going to that restaurant you've been wanting to try. Maybe it's donating to a cause that you care about. Maybe it's buying a nicer version of something instead of the cheapest option. The specific action doesn't matter as much as the energy behind it. What matters is that you're making a decision from, I have wealth, I have plenty, rather than I need to conserve because I don't have enough. And every single time you do this, you are sending a signal to your subconscious. You're saying, this is who I am. I am someone who has options. I am someone who does not operate from fear of lack. And here's what happens when you do this consistently. Your subconscious starts to believe the new identity because your subconscious mind doesn't know the difference between a $50 decision made from a state of wealth consciousness or a $50,000 decision made from a state of wealth consciousness. It just registers the state you were in when you made the choice. So these small acts from your wealthy identity are actually impressing the subconscious with the state of being wealthy. I started doing this with coffee. Now, I know that might sound ridiculous, but I always used to get just the cheap coffee. And one day I decided that the wealthiest version of me does not pinch pennies on coffee. So I started ordering exactly what I want without checking the price first. And that one shift, that tiny shift in relation to how I view a $6 decision started changing how I related to money in general. Because it's not about the coffee. It's about the state I was in when I made the choice. And when you start making choices from wealth consciousness, even small ones, your relationship with money will start to shift. Your subconscious starts accepting that you are someone who has abundance, and it starts creating circumstances that match that identity. So step 3 is actually non-negotiable if you truly want to embody wealth. One decision per week minimum from your wealthy identity, and watch how quickly your external reality will reflect that inner shift. But even with all of that, there's a 4th step that most people skip that actually determines whether this identity shift becomes permanent. And step 4, you have to stop celebrating money when it shows up and stop panicking when it doesn't. And this is the step that reveals whether you've actually shifted your identity or whether you're still trying to get wealth from a state of not having it. Because here's the test. When money shows up, an unexpected outcome, a payment, a win, how do you react? If you feel excited, if you feel relief, if you're celebrating like something amazing just happened, you are still in lack. You are operating from the identity of someone who doesn't have wealth. So when it shows up, it feels like an event. This took me a long time to figure out, and I'm so grateful that I finally arrived at the place where I understand this principle because it is crucial. Wealthy people, when money shows up, they're not surprised. They're not relieved. It's just normal. It's expected because their identity is, I always have money. So money showing up is not a miracle. It's just a confirmation of what they already knew was true. And the same thing on the flip side. When an unexpected expense comes up, when something costs more than you thought, when money doesn't show up exactly when you thought it would, how do you react? If you panic, if you feel broke again, if you spiral into, see, I knew this wasn't gonna work, see, I knew that I'm just not lucky like other people, that means you are still operating from poverty consciousness. If you panic, if you feel broke again, if you spiral into, I knew it wasn't real, you are still operating from poverty consciousness. You are still letting the 3D determine your state. But if you can look at an unexpected expense and just handle it neutrally, if you can see money not showing up on a specific timeline and not waver in your assumption of wealth, that's when you know your identity has actually shifted. Because now you're no longer being controlled by circumstances. You are maintaining your state regardless of what the 3D shows you. And this is what Neville meant when he said, you must persist in your assumption. He meant maintain the state regardless of evidence. And the only way to do that is to stop reacting emotionally to money, both the presence of it and the absence of it. So, step 4 is to practice neutrality. When money shows up, acknowledge it calmly. Of course, this is normal for me. And when money doesn't show up or an expense comes, you handle it from your wealthy identity. This is just a moment. My state is wealth. This circumstance does not and cannot change that. And the more you can maintain that sense of neutrality, the more your subconscious accepts that you are someone who has wealth, regardless of temporary circumstances. But neutrality alone isn't enough if you're not doing the 5th and final step. And this is the step that actually makes the identity permanent instead of something you have to work at. So step 5 is to end every single day by assuming wealth is your natural state. And this is where SATS, state akin to sleep, SATS, becomes your most powerful tool. Because everything we've talked about so far, catching yourself, changing your inner dialogue, making decisions from wealth, practicing neutrality around money, all of that is conscious work. But the real shift always happens in your subconscious. And the best time to impress your subconscious is right before sleep, when your conscious mind is quiet and your subconscious is the most receptive. So every night, as you're falling asleep, you do not visualize getting wealth. You do not imagine money showing up. You imagine the state of already being wealthy. You feel what it feels like to be someone who never worries about money. You assume the feeling of wealth being your permanent, natural state. You don't reach for it, you rest in it. And Neville was very specific about this. You don't imagine the means. You don't think about the how. You don't visualize the how. You simply occupy the state of the wish fulfilled. You're not imagining checking your account and seeing a big number. You're imagining the feeling of being someone for whom wealth is so normal that you don't even have to think about it. Maybe you can imagine yourself making a purchase without even checking the price. Maybe you can imagine a conversation where money is not even a concern. Or maybe you just feel the relief and the freedom of knowing that you are completely set for life. Whatever scene implies wealth is your natural state, that is what you loop as you fall asleep. And you do this every single night. Not as a technique that you do when you remember, you do it every single night. You impress the subconscious with the state of being wealthy. And what happens is that state starts to become your default. You start waking up with wealth consciousness. Instead of having to work yourself into it, you start operating from it automatically, instead of having to catch and correct yourself. I used to do this thing where I'd imagine myself waking up and just feeling completely calm about money. Not checking my bank account, not worrying about bills, just this deep, almost boring certainty that I was set for life. And I would loop the feeling of being set for life every night as I fell asleep. And as I did that, I started waking up with that calm certainty. The state that I was impressing at night started becoming my waking reality. So step 5 is non-negotiable. Every single night, SATS. Occupy the state of wealth as you fall asleep. Impress your subconscious with the assumption that you are permanently, naturally, effortlessly wealthy. Let that be the last thing your mind dwells on before sleep. See, all 5 of these steps work together. You catch yourself operating from the current bank account and you make a different choice. You script your inner dialogue to reflect wealth instead of lack. You make decisions from your wealthy identity and not your circumstances. You practice neutrality when money shows up and when it doesn't show up. And you impress your subconscious every single night as you fall asleep with the state of being set for life, being truly wealthy. Do these 5 things consistently and your financial identity will shift permanently. Not because you're doing more manifestation techniques, but because you're becoming someone different in consciousness. You are arranging your mind differently. And when your identity shifts, when that arrangement of your conscious and subconscious mind changes, your reality has no choice but to reflect it. This is not about faking it until you make it. This is not about pretending. This is about recognizing that consciousness is the only reality, and the person you are in consciousness is the person you become in the 3D. So, if you embody wealth now, if you make that identity shift in consciousness today, the 3D will catch up. It has to. It's the law. So, stop trying to manifest wealth. Stop waiting for circumstances to change before you allow yourself to feel wealthy. Start embodying wealth right now. Catch your thoughts. Change your inner conversations. Make decisions from wealth. Practice neutrality. Impress your subconscious every single night. Do those 5 steps and watch your financial identity and your financial reality completely transform. You don't need permission. You don't need proof. You don't need more money first. You just need to become, in consciousness, the person who is already set for life. And once you do that, everything else is just the 3D catching up to what is already true.